Today I'll be ranking every setup move in Pokémon from worst to best. For those in need of coaching, the titular term refers to any status move that increases a Pokémon's stats. This stockpile of specific status moves are some of the metagame's most vital, and the growth they can provide to certain Pokémon should not be minimized. Even the most hardened of Pokémon rely on these moves to sharpen their skills, as this cosmic power that decorates their moveset gears up the nasty plots they've meditated on to victory dance to the end of battle. What? Too much? Before we jump into the list, let's tidy up some of the fine details, shall we? As of Generation 9, there are 52 setup moves in the mainline Pokémon games. Well, kind of. If you count Z moves, there are technically a lot more, but since these moves are directly tied to a generational gimmick, I decided it was best to leave them off the list. So technically I'm not ranking every setup move, but does anybody really care about the 30-ish Z moves that give +1 speed? I'm also excluding evasion boosting moves, because 1, and 2, they're kind of impossible to rank due to their RNG. They're top tier if your opponent starts missing all their moves, but if they don't, they're kind of a waste. Thankfully, the only evasion boosting moves are Double Team and Minimize, so this doesn't make that big an impact. With those categories covered, we're left with exactly 50 setup moves. I know, I was surprised too. To make it easy, I split them up into 5 groups of 10, from D tier all the way up to S tier. While the tiers themselves are somewhat arbitrary, as there really isn't a big gap between the top of D tier and the bottom of C tier, they create nice benchmarks for both categorizing and discussing the setup moves. Last and certainly not least is how I ranked them. To put it simply, I considered 3 factors. First up should be obvious, the move itself. How good is the move? What kind of buff does it provide? Is it considered useful? And is it something worth considering for a Pokémon's moveset? Second is availability. A setup move may provide insane buffs, but if only one Pokémon gets it, can it really be considered one of the best? And third, its impact. This is a bit more abstract, but basically, how impactful has the move been in a competitive setting? And how impactful has the move been for the Pokémon that use it? TLDR, my goal is to be comprehensive with this list, not just rank them based on their competitive popularity. While I'm happy with the overall rankings, there's bound to be a few of you that disagree, so let me know how you would rank every setup move in the comments. And while you're at it, make sure you're subscribed. My dog and I would both appreciate it. Let's start at the very bottom with Let's get started at the very bottom with D tier. Simply put, these moves suck. It's pretty difficult to recommend using them over anything else, and you might be hurting yourself if you are using them. Consider this tier D for dog shit. Number 50, Flower Shield. At the very bottom, we have a move that technically isn't around anymore. Only present in Gens 6 through 8, Flower Shield raises the defense stat of all grass types on the field by 1 stage. No matter how you look at it, this move is pretty ass. Of the whopping 4 lines that get access to it, only half can actually gain the stat boost themselves, and both those mons already have a defense boosting move at that. Because of this, it's really only applicable in doubles, but even then it's still terrible. At best, you're giving your grass-type ally, and maybe one of these 2 losers, a +1 defense boost, and at worst, you're giving your opponent a defense boost. That's right, Flower Shield affects everything on the field, not just your allies. I don't want to harp on it for too long, as we have a lot of moves to get through, so I'll just finish with this. I understand why they didn't bring it back in Gen 9. Number 49, Rototiller. This move is simply the offensive version of Flower Shield, giving a +1 attack and special attack boost to all grounded grass Pokémon on the field. Much of what I said about Flower Shield applies to Rototiller, as it was also removed come Gen 9, is really only applicable in doubles, and can also buff your opponent. The only things giving it the edge are its wider availability and the fact that it buffs both attack and special attack, but let's be honest, regardless of which move you're talking about, they're not worth building an entire strategy around. Number 48, Sharpen. Another move that's not around anymore, Sharpen increases the user's attack by 1 stage. Originally this was the signature move of the Porygon line, but over time it was given to Cryogonal, the Avalugg line, Carbink, and Diancie. Simply put, none of these Pokemon want to use this move. They're either not physical attackers, have better options for boosting move, or sometimes both. Funny enough, it was also an event move given to Onix back in Gen 2, which might have genuinely been good. You know, if it wasn't Onix. Number 47, Meditate. Just like Sharpen, we have another move that's not around anymore that also increases the user's attack by 1 stage. While a few Mons got use out of Meditate in Gens 1 and 2, that all went out the window when Gen 3 came around, as every Pokemon that wanted to use Meditate got access to Bulk Up, leaving Meditate to fall into obscurity until it was eventually removed in Gen 8. Talk about power creep. Number 46, Shelter. Finally a move that's still in the game, we have Hisuian Gudra's signature move that raises the user's defense by 2 stages. If we look at Legends Arceus where the move was introduced, it also boosted the user's evasion, which is nothing short of incredible, or incredibly annoying depending on who you ask. Understandably, this was a bit too broken for the mainline games, so they removed the evasion aspect of it entirely. With that gone, Shelter is basically a carbon copy of Acid Armor, which Gudra also gets, with the only difference being that Shelter has less PP, begging the question, why would you ever choose to use Shelter? Honestly, the only reason it's not lower on the list is because it's still in the game, and because I may or may not have a slight Hisuian Gudra bias. Number 45, Aromatic Mist. Props if you even know what this move does. Originally Aromatese's signature move, Aromatic Mist raises the special defense of an ally by 1 stage. Since it can only be used in doubles, its usefulness is pretty limited, and even in doubles, it's not like it's an amazing move. Sure, a special defense boost is nice, and many Pokemon could make use of it, but in a format full of unique strategies, taking one of your turns to give your teammate a +1 SPDEF boost is pretty underwhelming. Number 44, Withdraw. This move increases the user's defense by 1 stage, and that's about it. Any Pokemon that wants to increase its defense is probably using something else. Is it a bad move? No. Is it a useful move? Also no. Number 43, Harden. Just like Withdraw, this move also increases the user's defense by 1 stage. As for why it's above Withdraw, the first reason is that it generally has better availability. The second reason, Harden is more meme-worthy. Yes, I'm serious. It may not have a competitive impact, but it certainly had a cultural one. Number 42, Gear Up. Originally I had this move and the one after it a bit lower, but I'm also trying to get over my bias against doubles, and this is a step in the right direction. Gear Up increases the attack and special attack stats of allied Pokemon with the ability plus or minus by 1 stage each. While it can be used in singles, it's best utilized in doubles, where you can actually take advantage of the abilities plus and minus themselves. Unfortunately, this move is hurt by its limited availability, as only Klinklang and Magearna get access to it. Number 41, Magnetic Flux. This is the exact same as Gear Up, only it increases the defense and special defense stats by 1 stage. While attack buffs are arguably better than defense buffs, Magnetic Flux has wider availability, meaning there's more likelihood for synergy, especially with plus and minus. That said, we're only at number 41, so don't get it twisted. It's still pretty bad. Now we're on to C tier. These are all moves that could be useful, but are either outclassed or too limited to really see any use. If D tier was full of moves that I don't think anybody should use, C tier has moves you would really only use if you wanted to try out some fun strategies. Number 40, Defense Curl. Our final move that increases the user's defense by 1 stage, the only things that put Defense Curl above Harden or Withdraw are its wider availability and the fact that it boosts the power of Rollout and Ice Ball. It's not that viable of a strategy, but it's more than the other moves have. Number 39, Stuffed Cheeks. Formerly Greedent's signature move, Stuffed Cheeks makes the user eat the berry it's holding, then raises its defense stat by 2 stages. While this move could lend itself to some nice strategies, since the user has to be holding a berry for it to work, it's pretty limited as a result. Hell, even Greedent, the Pokemon it was modeled after, doesn't really want to use it. Why stuff your cheeks when you can dance with swords, or drum on your belly? Honestly, I think my friend Chris Pache said it best.
You know, having big cheeks adds up. I'm actually pretty comfortable with this.
Number 38, Charge. The only move to just increase the user's special defense by 1 stage, Charge has the added effect of doubling the strength of the user's next electric move. And better yet, in Gen 9 they updated it so the charge effect doesn't go away until you use an electric move. Unless you switch out, of course. Just like Defense Curl and Rollout, it's a strategy you can use, but that doesn't necessarily make it a good one, unless you're Belly Bolt and have it built into your ability. Number 37, Defend Order. Next up is Vespiquen's signature move, which increases its defense and special defense by 1 stage. Of the Queen Bee's 3 signature moves, Defend Order is probably the worst, but that doesn't make it completely terrible. In fact, with the right combination of moves, and maybe a decent Terra type, you could make good use of it. But at the same time, it's still only on Vespiquen, so how useful is it really? Number 36, Stockpile. Very similar to our last move, Stockpile also increases the user's defense and special defense by 1 stage, with a hard limit of 3 stockpiles at a time. It pairs with both Spit Up and Swallow to either deal damage or heal the user with the stocked piles. While nobody really uses this move, it doesn't change the fact that it's still a dual defense boost, which can make the user difficult to take down. It's not great, but it's not unusable either, making it solid for C tier. Number 35, Decorate. Switching back over to doubles, Alcremie's signature move Decorate raises the target's attack and special attack by 2 stages. While specific to this whipped blob, Decorate's buff is no joke, providing a Pokemon with a Swords Dance and Nasty Plot boost in a single turn. And better yet, it's one of the few moves that bypasses Protect, meaning you can keep your ally safe while also doubling its offensive stats in the same turn. Plus, Decorate can be used to target opponents too, which is probably a bad idea, but could pair nicely with moves like Foul Play or Burning Jealousy. Honestly, it's a really cool move, but between it being a signature move and only being good in doubles, it finds itself down here. Number 34, Acupressure. Another really unique move, Acupressure chooses one of the target's stats at random and raises it by 2 stages, potentially even accuracy or evasion, and it can be used on an ally or the user itself. I'm blurring my own rules here a bit, as technically Acupressure is an evasion boosting move, but I'll make an exception. Partially because ranking 50 is way better than ranking 49. You can sit and debate this move's placement for a while, as its usefulness depends on RNG, but overall C tier fits it best. It could be a good strategy, but you're better off sticking with something more reliable. Number 33, Barrier. Back to something more basic, Barrier increases the user's defense by 2 stages. The last entries have been a bit long, so I'll make this one simple. It's a solid move, but between its limited availability and the other +2 defense moves out there, it's not good enough to escape the middling C tier. Number 32, Acid Armor. Speaking of other +2 defense moves, here we have the move that single-handedly put Shelter in D tier. Kind of the same thing as Barrier here. It's a solid move, but the only Pokemon that use Acid Armor over a different move are Hisuian Gudra and Swalot. Both awesome mons, but not good enough to dig Acid Armor out of D tier, C tier, whatever tier we're in. Number 31, Howl. This move shifted around a bit during scripting, as I originally had it toward the bottom of C tier. As for why it jumped up in ranking, while a +1 attack boost is nothing to write home about, if Pokemon like Zazamenta use it every so often, clearly it's decent enough to warrant the top of C. Also, there may or may not be some slight dog bias coming into play here, but don't worry about it. Now we're on to B tier, and this is where moves actually start getting good. Pretty much every move in this tier has some level of competitive viability, and while they may not be commonplace, you wouldn't be too shocked to see them while playing on the ladder. Number 30, Work Up. Starting off the B tier, we have one of the most basic setup moves there is. Work Up simply increases the user's attack and special attack by 1 stage. There's a reason this is the TM given to you by the first gym leader in Gen 5, whether we're talking about Charon or the Striaton trio. Tons of Pokemon get access to it, it buffs both offensive stats, and it also has a fun sound effect in black and white. It's a basic setup move meant to introduce you to the concept, making it perfect for the B tier. Number 29, Amnesia. As the only move to give a +2 special defense boost, plenty of defensive Pokemon like Slowbro and Torkoal can take advantage of this to make themselves even bulkier. It's pretty good, it just doesn't see a ton of use. At least not since Gen 1. Number 28, Cotton Guard. As the only move to give a +3 defense boost, Cotton Guard can be really annoying to deal with even if its availability is somewhat limited. Maxing out your defenses in 2 moves shouldn't be taken lightly, especially when paired with a certain fighting type move. Unfortunately, only one Pokemon gets that combo as of Gen 9, but the move is still good enough in general to warrant its place in the B tier. Number 27, Growth. Despite having the same effect as Work Up and a smaller roster of users, Growth finds itself a few places higher since it gives double the boosts when in harsh sunlight. Many Chlorophyll users run this move to great avail, with Venusaur being one of the best examples. That said, it does require Sun to be used to the fullest, and you probably won't see it anywhere outside of a Sun team. Regardless, the double boost can be very scary on the right mon, so it definitely earns a spot in B tier. Number 26, Hone Claws. Kind of opposite to Howl, Hone Claws is a move I originally had much higher on the list. As the only move to give an accuracy boost in addition to a stat buff, What? Why did I say that? There's literally a move later that does it. As one of the only moves to give an accuracy boost in addition to a stat buff, you would expect to see it a lot more, especially considering how widespread the move is. But in my experience, it's often looked over in favor of something else, whether that be a better boosting move or just more coverage. And while the accuracy boost is great, especially for mons that rely on inaccurate moves, most Pokemon don't want to run inaccurate moves, which in reality makes it little better than Howl. Ask me on a different day and I could lean a different way. Ooh, bars. So middle of the pack it is. Number 25, Autotomize. The fact that we just got to a speed boosting move should tell you how important they are. It's no secret speed is the most important stat in competitive Pokemon, and being able to double your speed in a single turn can go a long way. Plus, Autotomize's effect of lightning the user can help out with surviving a low kick. Maybe. I wouldn't call it a bad move in any way, it's just outclassed by other options. Number 24, Rock Polish. Hey, speaking of other options, simply put, this is higher than Autotomize because more Pokemon get access to it. Like, a lot more. Number 23, Fillet Away. I don't particularly like Veluza, nor do most people I bet, but its signature move Fillet Away is no joke. Getting a +2 attack, special attack, and speed buff in one turn is a crazy good. He's a crazy good. I wrote that like Mario. Getting a +2 attack, special attack, and speed buff in one turn is crazy good, even if it has to lose half its HP in progress. It's far and away the best setup move we've seen thus far. Then again, it's only on Veluza. Number 22, Take Heart. If you're unfamiliar with this newer move, it's the signature move of both Manaphy and Fione that raises the user's special attack and special defense by one stage, and heals its status condition. I don't know why they made this move, but linking Calm Mind and Refresh a la Mystery Dungeon was kind of a wild choice. And I say that after numerous random battle matches where this little idiot sets up and sweeps my team, which I don't feel like it should be able to do with its garbage stats, so yeah, it's a pretty good move. That said, it's still limited, so it's hard to put it a lot higher than this. Number 21, No Retreat. This is our first Omni boosting move on the list, meaning it increases every stat by one stage. The trade-off is that the user, aka Phalanx, well, can't retreat. It's kind of in the name. This is a pretty great trade-off to make, as any Pokemon setting up wants to stay on the field. You wouldn't be able to switch out and use it later, but the goal when using it should be winning with Phalanx anyways. While these silly little guys may not be broken with no retreat, it's hard to deny how amazing an Omni boost is, landing the move at the top of B tier. The last three moves were tough to rank, as their exclusivity makes comparing them a lot more challenging. I can see someone arguing they should be lower since only 1 or 2 mons get them, but I can also understand the opposite just because the moves themselves are so good. Keep this in mind as we get into the A tier, as availability ended up playing a big part. That said, this is where we start getting into the really good stuff. Number 20, Coaching. Bro, I have no idea where to put this move. It increases your allies' attack and defense by one stage each, and can hit through Protect like Decorate can. I can't rank it that high since it's specific to doubles, but it's arguably the best doubles-specific setup move there is. Then again, Decorate is down at number 35, so does this really deserve to crack the top 20? VGC fans, please tell me your thoughts on this move. I need some coaching. Number 19, Tidy Up. This was another tough one to rank, as on paper it's nothing short of incredible. Not only does it increase attack and speed by one stage, it also clears hazards off the field. If this move was widespread, it would easily crack the top 5. But instead, only a chinchilla, some mice, and a ferret, weasel, cacomissile thing can use it. I have nothing against these three, but let's not pretend like they're broken with this move. Aside from Chinchino, these two don't even have 80 base attack, and they're all pretty damn frail, making setup quite the challenge. Regardless, I can't ignore how good the move itself is, especially because of the hazard clearing, which lands it in A tier. Number 18, Shift Gear. What's better than an attack and speed boost? An attack and double speed boost. This is a pretty high degree of setup considering there's no downside associated, and Pokemon like Genesect, Magearna, Cyclizar, Klinklang, Revavroom, and Toxtricity all use this to great avail. As for why it's at number 18, it's because these 6 are the only users of the move. As I said, availability matters, and as a result, Shift Gear has fallen below a move that's technically worse than it. Number 17, Cosmic Power. This move doesn't see a crazy amount of use, as increasing defense and special defense by one stage typically isn't as optimal as buffing your offensive stats. Plus, it's not like a ton of Pokemon get access to it either. But those bits aside, anybody that's been on the receiving end of the Cosmic Power Stored Power duo will agree, this move is pretty stupid. I've seen this strategy make Chimecho a threat. Chimecho! Plus, on certain legendary Pokemon, things can get out of hand really quickly with only 1 or 2 uses of the move. If you know, you know. Number 16, Coil. Coil increases the user's attack, defense, and accuracy by 1 stage. While it may seem only marginally better than Hone Claws, Coil is one of those moves that really shouldn't be taken lightly. It may not be super widespread, but the mons that do use it can get out of control really quickly. A big reason for this is due to EV spreads, as a Pokemon can cover itself on the special end with proper investment and use Coil to buff itself physically, making it threatening in both an offensive and defensive sense. Originally it was almost S tier, but the snake-like prerequisite keeps it limited, landing it in the middle of A tier. Number 15, Agility. One of the OG setup moves, Agility finds itself above other speed boosting moves due to the sheer volume of Pokemon that can learn it. And while plenty of Pokemon pass it up in favor of different setup moves, it still sees a ton of usage, making it the best setup move that solely buffs speed. That said, over the last few gens, moves like Trailblaze, Scale Shot, and the buffed Rapid Spin have been at the forefront for boosting speed, so number 15 it is. And this is where things start getting really divisive. Number 14, Tail Glow. I know putting the highest offensive boosting move at number 14 seems crazy, as maxing out your special attack in 2 moves is ludicrous. However, only 3 Pokemon get access to it, and of those 3, Xurkitree can only use it in Gen 7, and Volbeat sucks, meaning it's really only a Manaphy move. And while this small blue aquatic Pokemon with stubby feet and club-like arms uses it amazingly, that's literally how Bulbapedia describes Manaphy, in my opinion, it's not worthy of being an S tier setup move. Otherwise, Manaphy would be higher than the RU ban list. Number 13, Victory Dance. I told you things were getting divisive. The signature move of Hisui and Lilligant finally gave us a physical counterpart to Quiver Dance, increasing attack, defense, and speed in 1 turn. While its user isn't the best Pokemon out there, it's another move that would easily crack the top 5 if it was widespread. You really can't downplay a move that buffs both offense and speed in the same turn, as only having one or the other can be a bit limiting. There's a reason Pokemon run dual setups sometimes, despite taking up half their moveset. But again, as a signature move, it has to fall just shy of S tier. Number 12, Clangorous Soul. Our second Omni boosting move, and the signature move of Kommo-o, comes with the trade-off of losing a third of the user's max HP. Having this kind of a boosting move on a pseudo-legendary Pokemon with this well-rounded of stats is absolutely terrifying. I know plenty of us have seen a Kommo-o use Clangorous Soul and immediately wipe a team. Especially because it's a sound move, meaning it can be paired with Throat Spray to give Kommo-o another special attack boost. If even one more Pokemon had access to it, I'd put it in S tier, but availability strikes again. Number 11, Geomancy. Xerneas' signature move is a 2-turn move that increases special attack, special defense, and speed by 2 stages. Turn 1 the user charges, and turn 2 it gets the buffs. Thankfully with the item Power Herb, you can make this happen in 1 turn. With it, many would agree that Geomancy is the best stat boosting move in the entire game, easily worthy of S tier. However, with Xerneas as its only user and the reliance on Power Herb to make the most of this move, I struggle to put it any higher than the top of A tier. I recognize this move has made lots of waves since it was introduced, but regardless of how you look at it, Geomancy matters for 1 Pokemon in a sea of over 1,000. It's like calling Wonder Guard the best ability in the game. I won't say you're wrong, but on a comprehensive scale, I can't agree. That said, this move is still stupid and deserves to be at the top of the A tier. Now it's time for the big leagues. I consider the following 10 moves to be the best setup moves in Pokemon as of Generation 9. While individual placement may be up for debate, between the impact they've made, their availability, and the raw stat boosts themselves, every move is worthy of being in this tier. Number 10, Iron Defense.
How could you rank Iron Defense above Geomancy? Clearly you don't know what you're talking about, Shep. It's the same thing as Acid Armor, so it should be down in C tier too, you idiot.
Prior to Gen 8, nobody really used Iron Defense. A +2 defense boost is helpful, sure, but it's not like you could capitalize on it like you would an attack or speed boost. That of course changed with the introduction of the move, Body Press, which uses the defense stat of the user as the attack stat when calculating damage. This combo of moves has become a mainstay in the metagame, allowing Pokemon who were formerly strict walls to break through entire teams, much to the chagrin of people like me. Now, I'm aware that Body Press is more the issue here, but due to its existence, Iron Defense has skyrocketed in popularity, making some amazing Pokemon even more broken, and allowing others to be way more threatening than they have the right to be.
Seriously? Carbing should not be able to deal this much damage.
Of all moves that focus purely on buffing defense, it's the best and most widespread option on average, and in my opinion has truly earned a spot in the S tier. Number 9, Belly Drum. The most ambitious setup move, Belly Drum takes away 50% of the user's max HP for the trade-off of maxing out its attack. Fun fact, since it automatically jumps the user up to +6, Belly Drum can increase a Pokemon's attack stat by 12 stages in a single turn. Quite a few Pokemon have used this move over the years to wreak havoc on metagames. Even Linoon, who despite its mediocre stats, had extreme speed to out-prioritize and usually KO everything. Azumarill, Slurpuff, and the big-bellied boy himself have also contributed to the move's notoriety. As you would expect, the HP loss keeps it from landing any higher, but I can at least say that no setup move makes a player think, oh shit, faster than a Belly Drum. Number 8, Curse. At first glance, Curse may not seem like a top 10 worthy move. An increase to attack and defense is certainly nice, but it comes at the trade-off of lowering your speed, which as we've said is usually the most important stat. Plus, we've already covered Coil, which is technically better since it trades the lowered speed for increased accuracy. But despite that all being true, Curse is still better, mostly because a ridiculous amount of Pokemon get access to it. It's up there with Agility in terms of availability. Ooh, bars! But it's more than just that. A lot of Pokemon with terrible speed typically have an advantage in the bulk department, as those base stats that would be spent on speed are usually spent elsewhere, like on HP, defense, or special defense. On the flip side, many fast Pokemon are frail because their base stats are used for their offensive capabilities. Curse allows those slower, bulkier Pokemon a chance to set up and sometimes completely wipe through a team, especially when paired with Rest and Sleep Talk to make them unkillable, or even Gyro Ball to make use of the lowered speed. It may not be the flashiest setup move out there, but it's been reliable since it dropped in Gen 2 and has earned a spot in the top 10. Number 7, Bulk Up. Yeah, it's just Curse without the speed drop. It may not be as widespread as Curse, but for one, speed is still pretty important for most Pokemon, and two, of the Pokemon that do get access to both Bulk Up and Curse, most of them end up using Bulk Up. So yeah. Number 6, Shell Smash. Just outside the top 5, we have a very scary setup move that boosts attack, special attack, and speed by 2 stages at the trade-off of lowering defense and special defense by 1 stage. But thanks to Shell Smash's best friend, the White Herb, you can get rid of those defense drops immediately. That said, because of those drops, there aren't many scenarios where Shell Smash gets used more than once. You typically don't need to use it more than once, but it is a factor to be considered that the moves in the top 5 don't need to worry about. There's a lot more I could say about this move, but I think fellow YouTuber Electric Wind Girlfriend said it best in a video they released recently.
In conclusion, Shell Smash is an extremely polarizing option. With some of the most absurd stat boosts in the entire game, balancing it becomes almost impossible and creates either bad or broken Pokemon.
I highly recommend watching their full video as they cover the move and its impact in depth while also being pretty succinct, but between Shell Smash's somewhat limited availability, slight reliance on an item, and inconsistent results between its users, it's just shy of the top 5. Number 5, Nasty Plot. This is our first move that's nothing more than a simple +2 offense boost. Seriously, it's taken 46 moves to get here. And understandably so, as doubling your special attack stat is some pretty serious business. Nasty Plot is the trademark move for special attackers looking to sweep through a team, whether they're an OG like Gengar or a newcomer like Goldengo. It's not reserved for just powerhouses though, as many middling Pokemon can use the move to great success. Hell, I used a team with Nasty Plot Corviknight, which I'd like to remind you has a 53 base special attack, and it put in work. Thanks, Red. You could maybe convince me to move it up a spot or two, but let's not act like 5th place is poor by any means. Nasty Plot is easily an S-tier setup move, worthy of cracking the top 5. Number 4, Calm Mind. I don't think I need to explain why Calm Mind is in the top 5, but rather, why it's above Nasty Plot, as you can easily argue a double special attack boost is favorable to raising special attack and special defense by 1 stage apiece, especially considering that a certain move that doubles attack didn't end up below Bulk Up. So many Pokemon have carved out spots in the competitive Hall of Fame due to this move. Clefable, Suicune, and Mega Sableye are just a few of the Pokemon that have made people hate this move as they become impossible to take down once set up. And that's where Calm Mind gets the edge over Nasty Plot for me. It's a high-risk, high-reward strategy versus a slow and steady wins the race.
What are you doing, Gary? The race has started! So let Snelly take the lead! Let's go, Gary! Start moving! You're blowing everything we trained for! Blowing it!
It's okay, Rocky. You go when you feel like it.
Come on, Gary! It's a race! A race!
That coach is pushing that snail too hard.
Faster, Gary! Faster, 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 faster!
Huh? Oh, looks like number 7 has a blowout. Oh, take that too, folks.
Gary, you can stop now!
And he's losing control.
You can take a breath now if you want to, Gary!
Right for the wall!
That's impossible. If Snelly didn't win, then...
And the winner is Rocky!
I could see an argument for swapping them, and I truly think it comes down to preference, but between the move's availability, iconic status, and overall strategy, I have to give TM04 the 4th place slot. Number 3, Swords Dance. Many people like to debate what's better in Pokemon, physical attackers or special attackers. The topic is honestly pretty contentious, as I can see strong arguments for either side. And while in reality it's likely a case-by-case basis, I can confidently say that regarding setup moves, physical attackers have the edge, and Swords Dance is a big factor in that. Despite it having the same effect as Nasty Plot, only physical, Swords Dance is much more widespread. Not to mention, many Pokemon that get the move actually use it ridiculously well, in spite of things like Burn or Intimidate that people usually bring up when arguing against physical attackers. And while those are relevant, so is the fact that most priority moves are physical, as is Trailblaze, a move that physical attackers cheered about when it was released in Gen 9. Then there's abilities like Justified, Defiant, and Moxie that all heavily weigh in favor of physical moves. I'm not trying to end the debate between physical and special attackers, as again, I do think it's a case-by-case basis, but due to availability, impact on the metagame, and the variety of things that pair well with it, in my opinion, Swords Dance is easily the best setup move in the game that doesn't also boost speed. Speaking of which, number 2, Quiver Dance. If you were to ask people what the best setup move in Pokemon is, odds are you'll get a lot of people saying Quiver Dance, and understandably so. Gaining a special attack, special defense, and speed boost in one turn is nothing short of spectacular, and even the move's mediocre users can set up and sweep through a team with only a few clicks of the move. If every Pokemon got every setup move, Quiver Dance would still sit at the top, alongside moves like Geomancy, Victory Dance, and Tail Glow. However, not every Pokemon gets it. This may surprise you to hear, but only 15 lines get access to Quiver Dance, and while some of them are incredible with this move, let's not act like Dustox and Beautifly are taking names with it. That said, on the flip side, Cutiefly of all Pokemon was banned from Little Cup tier mostly because of this move. I know I've ranked other moves pretty low because of their limited availability, and maybe you think Quiver Dance should be a bit lower for the same reason, but regardless of whether you think it's top 3, top 5, or even barely in the top 10, it's easily one of the best setup moves in all of Pokemon. But not the best, as that spot belongs to number 1, Dragon Dance. As we've established, a move that increases both an offensive stat and speed is the best kind of setup move. I mean, hell, all 10 that fall into that category landed in the top half of the list, despite 5 of them being signature moves. And while I can understand the argument for Quiver Dance or Shell Smash possibly going above it, no setup move has been as consistent and impactful as Dragon Dance. With a few rare exceptions, every Pokemon that has Dragon Dance benefits from Dragon Dance, regardless of whether they're top tier or, well, not that. Even Pokemon that are better at special attacking will opt to run this move from time to time, because it's simply that good. But more than anything, the real reason this move stands out as a juggernaut is because of the Dragon type itself. Fairy types were introduced specifically because the Dragon type was getting out of control. They dropped Dracos, launched Outrages, and of course, set up with Dragon Dance, letting many of them wipe teams with little trouble. And while Fairies and Steel types have helped put Dragon in its place over the years, that doesn't change the fact that the metagame is always full of threats ready to use this move. It's a setup move made for one of the best types in the game, to keep them as one of the best types in the game. I know the Dragon type as a whole was broken, and Dragon Dance wasn't the sole reason Game Freak introduced Fairies, but at the same time, can you honestly say that without Dragon Dance's existence, we would have gotten the Fairy type? Better yet, I'll make it even easier. Name any other setup move that contributed to an entire type being put into the game. It was quite the challenge to figure out these placements, but it was a fun challenge at that. Be sure to let me know how you'd rank the setup moves, even if it's just the top 5 or 10, and let me know if you'd want me to rank other categories of moves. But until then, thanks so much for watching, and as thanks for making it to the end of the video, here's a picture of my dog. Talk to y'all soon.